When we notice what we have been told or who we've been told we are doesn't match our insides, that's when the tension starts. That's when all of the feelings about how you're not enough, how you can't do this, how you can't do that, what's wrong with me, why does she can do it and I can't do it? That's when all this stuff starts blowing up, right? How come they're normal and I'm not? I don't know, whatever you want to say, right? So notice when you have or what you've been told doesn't match how you feel on the inside. We've been taught to smash that down for sake of other people. And I am not of the opinion that that is healthy. I am of the opinion that the deeper I know myself, the more I am comfortable and engaged internally, the more I am comfortable and engaged externally. Hello, beautiful people. Yes, I am talking to you. Are you ready to feel confident AF, free from the expectations and opinions of others, and create ultimate self-trust in who you are, what you say, and how you show up in every part of your life? If you answered a hell yes, I am, I guarantee this episode will empower you to be 100% yourself, 100% of the time, no shame or guilt needed. It's time for you to strut your stuff, express yourself with freedom, and fully embrace every freaking fabulous part of you. Let's dive in. Hello, my beautiful friends, and welcome to another episode of Road to Radical Visibility. My name is Rachel Freemon Sowers, also known as the Break Free Bitch, because I am passionate about helping people just like you break free from the toxic social constructs, expectations, and beliefs that are holding you back from experiencing your life exactly the way that you want to. And if you've hung out here for very long, you'll know that my personal and professional motto is being 100% yourself, 100% of the time, no shame or guilt needed. And today's episode has been a really huge realization and revelation actually to me over the past several years as I've done the deeper work that I wanted and needed to do in order to begin experiencing my life exactly the way that I want to. Now, when I say exactly the way that I want to, this includes those times when I wasn't expecting something to happen, or there was something that happened out of my purview, my control, and I got to experience that in the way that I wanted to because of the realizations about co-creation that I'm going to share with you today. So I want to share with you 5 realizations about co-creation that can actually help set you free. And when I'm talking about setting you free, I'm talking about setting you free from the self-shaming, the judgment, the guilt, the fear, the playing small, all of the things that really aren't working for you anymore. I know it's been my experience that the older I get, the more wisdom I have about what doesn't work for me. And this idea of co-creation is really an in-depth education and theory that I've been studying with my mentor, Morgana McCabe-Allen. And we talk about co-creation a lot and how it has affected us as a culture, as a community, and how it affects each one of us personally. So I am wondering if you realize that in every given moment of the day, there is a co-creation happening. And when I went to look up the definition of co-creation online, I Googled it. Yes, I did. They came up with a lot of co-creation as far as like collaborating with other people. But I think there's more of a subtle co-creation that happens. Well, I know there is from the moment that we're born. And we don't really realize how much we are co-creating because I believe in lots of instances, we're taught that we're out here controlling our lives, responsible for everything that happens to us. And we are kind of like this solo thing on the planet. And it's our job to try and manage and have everything in our sphere the way that we want it. And then, like, yes, we affect other people, but that's like what our major locus of control is. How can I control myself? And in that, it can create a lot of feelings of shame and guilt and fear and all the emotions that I just mentioned. Now, if we go on a whole nother layer, so we co-create in the bigger sense, just me being part of the LGBTQ plus, there's been co-creation in how I interact in that community, how I find my own community. There's a co-creation that happens in how I relate in the online space as an online entrepreneur, as a therapist, as a coach, a visibility coach, helping other people see themselves, their truest parts, the most beautiful parts of themselves, and living a life in the way that they want to. So co-creation plays a role in the way that you perceive, the way that you interact, and you feel about places and things. So an example is a lot of people will say Disneyland is super fun. It is it's super fun. Other people will say it's a waste of money. Everything costs too much. Interesting if we notice where those thoughts and the way that we interact with and the way that we feel about something has been co-created with culture. So take a moment to think of something in which you have an opinion about. And then take it the next level deeper and say, where did this opinion come from? What context was I given that then formed this opinion about this place or this thing? Okay. Co-creation is also responsible for the way that you perceive, interact, and feel about others. Now, not much explanation has to be given to this. And when we feel, think, or say, or have an opinion about others, there's a co-creation that comes along with that. Most importantly, co-creation plays an important role on how you perceive, interact, and feel about yourself. Now, the other two, we can see how that operates. But when it comes to looking how the co-creation with our culture has affected the way we interact, feel, and think about ourselves, it's not something that's very common. You see, I believe that we're taught from a very young age that we are responsible for things. Even when, and being a therapist for 25 years, working with children for a majority of those years, the way that we as adults view children and what we think that they're responsible for or what they should know, often, I'll just say it, is ludicrous. I might get some heat for that. But what I'm saying is that from a young age, we're taught, oh, you can do this by yourself. Good job walking on your own. Good job doing all this stuff. And then we're taught other things throughout our lives. And it's like, oh, yes, be the person that you want to be, but don't be like that. And I've used that example before, but it's one of the most common examples I can give. So I would love to ask you just right now, what has co-creation or how has co-creation affected the way you think, feel, and interact with yourself? You see, the realization, the understanding of how co-creation works either feels very terrifying and overwhelming, or it can feel very freeing. Because when we have the realizations, the 5 realizations I'm going to share with you about co-creation, it allows you to shed off the layers that you have put on to yourself, thinking that you had to be a certain way, thinking that you only have responded in you're supposed to respond in a certain way. You understand where all of the things come from that were never really yours in the first place. But we were told to adopt these feelings, these beliefs, these expectations. And this is why I'm so passionate about this work, is because all of us are experiencing it right now. I had a client say to me, she's like, I'm just realizing that this is a journey And the more I get to know myself, the more I realize where these things have come from. Not exactly the why all the time, but the where. Once we have that identified, it's no longer a question of why or where. It is more of a question of what do I want instead, right? So if you find yourself asking yourself, why is this happening? Why do I keep repeating the same pattern? I want you to, for the purposes of this podcast, this show, this episode, ask yourself, where is that coming from? The majority of the time, when you trace it back, you will find that it has been influenced by something or somebody else. I don't care if it's religion. I don't care if it's educational constructs, workplace constructs, corporate America, whatever. Find and see, where does this belief, where does this thing come from? The most damaging part of co-creation that can be felt is the way that we take it on to ourselves, or the way we blame ourselves. So I'm hoping in this episode, we're going to remove some of those things and free you from it with these 5 realizations about co-creation. All right. So the goal for this episode is for you to no longer take over responsibility for things that have never been yours, that were never your truth. We want to release that responsibility. So we want to free you from taking over responsibility. I want you to be free from the judgment that's stopping you from reaching your goals or experiencing the life that you want to. Self-judgment stops us so many times. It stopped me for so many times. And when we get out and free ourselves from the self-judgment, we no longer have as many obstacles. And there's a way that we do that. The third thing is the shame that has diminished your confidence and kept you from abundance in all areas of your life. I've said this before, I'll say it again, and I'll continue to say it. I think that self-shaming is the most common thing that we are taught in our culture. Now, I think that some of that is shifting, but if you're 51 like me, self-shaming has been taught to you, and I have been a master at it. Can you relate? I was taught that it was my fault, that I was the person that was causing all the energy in the room, that I'm the person that was too sensitive, that I was the problem. Self-shaming is rampant in our country and in each one of us. And our job is to see it for really what it is and not to take it on. The fourth thing that I wanted to free you from is the fear of the unknown. So many times we are afraid of the unknown because we don't know what's going to happen. Now, if you think about this is also called hypervigilance. And I have had a plan B, C, D, E, F, G. I don't know if you can relate in the past about several things because I planned for every contingency. Now, for those of you who don't know or haven't heard me say this before, I've suffered from high, insane anxiety the majority of my life. And over the last 7 to 10 years have been working very deeply in releasing the anxiety and freeing myself of fear of the unknown, freeing myself of self-doubt. Now it comes up, but the fact of the matter is I move through it or it doesn't affect me. There's not a reaction that I have. Sometimes it does, and I know how to move through it. The other thing too are the thoughts and feelings about yourself that were never yours. I want to free you with an understanding of where this stuff has come from. So as I move through these 5 realizations, I would love for you to start just taking a moment of reflection and saying, okay, what does this mean to me? What realization am I having here? Do I have an aha moment? Am I like, holy shit, like this is where that comes from, and it's not mine. Okay, so let's dive into the 5 realizations. I want to give you a really simple exercise after these 5 realizations that can help you even ground yourself more in knowing how you want to co-create. and bringing in your awareness of that. And when you do, you actually start creating conscious co-creation. Okay, so here are the 5 realizations. And this is going to be, you're going to be like, well, duh, Rachel, you already said this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Everything is co-created. Everything is co-created. Now, it doesn't always mean it's co-created with another person. On an energetic level, everything is co-created. Therefore, not one person is solely responsible for something. Now, I am not talking, well, yes, I am. I'm going to stick by that. There might be some lashback. What do you call that? Where people get upset and say, no, it doesn't. But I'm going to stick with my guns. I'm going to stick with my knowing and say that none of us are solely responsible for anything. Everything is co-created. If you're like, Rachel, I'm responsible for the way I act. Okay. So let's talk about that. If you're responsible for the way you act, who taught you how to act the way that you act? Well, I taught myself. No, you didn't. It's from your experiences, your societal expectations. It's from all the things that you've gathered. So nothing is solely created. So that means you're not solely responsible. Now, this doesn't mean you go out and do whatever you want. Actually, you can do that if you want to. But what it means is that you no longer need to be overly responsible for everything else. I have been taught through toxic social constructs, through toxic religious constructs and traumas, that I am responsible. And if I do this one thing, if I am an LGBTQ plus person, if I'm a lesbian, I am going to go to hell. Now, I know that this is not solely the belief anymore. And it's definitely not my belief. But when I heard that, I was like, that doesn't make any sense to me. And that is like when I was in the 5th grade. So in that moment in time, trying to be told exactly how I was going to end up and knowing that that wasn't the truth was my sign that there was a different way of co-creation, which in turn equaled me rebelling, which in turn equaled me speaking up for myself and getting in trouble all the time in my private school. It in turn said, I am no longer staying in your parameters. And in the traditional sense, it didn't work out for me very well, but it worked out for me very well now, right? And so I pushed a lot of boundaries because I was like, this doesn't make sense. You're not the only thing in this world, right? So this is to relieve you from that over responsibility. The second realization is how you feel about something is co-created with culture. So an example of this is how I feel about how I look on video is co-created with culture, even though I'm the only one on the video. And a lot of people who I help, a lot of business owners, when we talk about visibility, is about being able to be visible to yourself. And there is no way to be visible to yourself more than when you're sitting here talking to yourself in the camera. And yes, I'm talking to all of you, but I see myself the whole time I'm talking. Right? And so the way I feel about myself being on camera is culturally co-created. You know, you really look like a lesbian. Okay. I guess that's fine. Like, it's good. I'm too fat. I'm too skinny. You're not supposed to have a background because it will confuse people. You know what I mean? So all of the things are co-created with culture, how you feel about something. This can free you from the judgment. So when I look at myself in the camera, and I don't have any negative thoughts really anymore. How I show up is how I show up. This is real and raw. This is how I choose to be in the world. And this is how I want to interact. So when I release that judgment of myself from the things I was taught of what and how to judge myself, I sit here and I experience more freedom. I experience the freedom to show up as myself. I allow the releasing of all of the bullshit that I was taught that honestly can still be in my head sometimes. And I say, no, thank you. This is not how I'm interacting with myself today. So that's a really easy exercise to do. What is a no, thank you? And what is a yes, please? No, thank you. Yes, I'm having more of self-acceptance, of no judgment, right? Okay, that's number 2. Number 3 is how you define the words you speak to yourself are a co-creation with culture. All right. So the words I speak to myself, so many times I've heard people say, why do I have to be like this? Why am I like this, Rachel? Why can't I just whatever? Why am I the weird one? The words that we use, the definition of the words that we use to talk to ourselves are co-created with culture. The freak, the weird one, the not good enough, the out of place, the not belonging. When we say to ourselves, wow, you really should, blah, blah, blah. Those meanings of those words that we're speaking are co-created with culture. This is why it is so freaking important to be conscious and intentional about how we talk to ourselves. We need to be intentional about the music that we listen to. I mean, I heard a song on the radio this morning and it said, I would rather be in hell than alone. Lord, no, right? And I know it's just a song, but how many times in the chorus is that song saying that? And then the person who truly feels like they're alone, how often does that have them continue down this path of codependency, to continue down this path in which they are not feeling or experiencing the life that they want to, or even experiencing their life that they want to with someone else, right? We have to be conscious and intentional and realize that the words that you're speaking to yourself are defined by culture and that you have the ability to not define them in that way anymore. Now, this is where it becomes so empowering. And so sometimes we try and switch language, or sometimes we try and put a different perception on words. And yet the words that we speak to ourselves really aid in the identification of who we believe we are. Therefore, our identity becomes a co-creation. All right. So how you define the words you speak to yourself are a co-creation of culture. Really take note of that over the next couple of days and decide, is this really how I want to be interacting with myself? You know, we go up to that co-creation, and co-creation makes a difference on how we interact, feel, and how we perceive ourselves. So when you realize that, you can say, I am no longer claiming this as my truth. You know, as a visibility coach, it's teaching people to use their voice, to express and don't repress. You know, there's a whole bunch of beliefs. There's a whole bunch of co-creation that has come across that you can say that, but don't say it that way. Or if you're expressing yourself, you're responsible for everyone else's feelings or whatever, right? It comes down to that. Okay, back to it. Number 4 is what you think you know about the unknown is co-created. And your results are predetermined by your past and current co-creation. So it's kind of like what you think about, you bring about. So if you have a way in which you think, a perception, a way in which you think something is going to be experienced, that will lead your experience. That has been co-created because you're taking from the things that you have experienced, been taught, and all that, and you're bringing it in. Now, I'm going to share with you a little bit on how to undo this part. But what you've heard is what fires together wires together. And then we become in a pattern, and then we continue that same pattern over and over and over again. This is really where, again, another powerful way of being can be shifted. And you can actually say, what I know about the unknown, or what I think I know about the unknown, may not be the truth. Now, there are some things that you know, that you think you know, that's going to have the result too. I'm wondering if you've ever predetermined a result and you got to the thing, or you went to the place, or you did whatever, and you're like, that's not really how it turned out. And it really turned out for the better, right? So how do we allow that space? And this can be really freeing, this realization, because then you no longer need to fear the unknown. You no longer feel like you need to have control or that hypervigilance to have plan A, B, C, D, E, F. Right? I'm planning for all the things that could go wrong. Believe me, I've lived my life like that. It was exhausting. Number 5 is that every meaning you give to emotions, your body reactions, your identity, your worthiness, were all co-created by culture. This can feel super heavy. Because think about it. We were talking today in a group, and it was about, what does fear feel like? What does it feel like in your body? And just take a moment to do this little exercise. You know, when you feel fear, what happens in the body? We have these bodily reactions. The body knows. For me, the body is primary. The mind is secondary. My mind does not control my body. I have the power to link them both together. The body is an initial fear detector. It does that because we are taught to keep ourselves safe. It says, hey, I must survive this world to do whatever, to procreate, whatever. And this is how I have to keep myself safe. But even that safety, that fear has been defined by instances or examples that have been co-created in this culture. And then the fear becomes more of, I don't know if I'm going to be able to cope with all of this. And then the fear becomes, I don't know if I'm enough. Therefore, breaking down our self-esteem and our confidence and our ability to know ourselves and know what is right for us. And then all the other influences come in from culture to say, this is what you should do with all of that, instead of you being able to say, this is what I want to do with it. So this is freeing because you can realize that the majority of the thoughts that you're currently having about something that is wrong with you, about not being enough, about feeling overwhelmed, not being able to cope, the way your body is reacting, it can be interpreted differently. And this is where we truly make some big foundational shifts and experience life the way that you want to. Okay, so you're like, great, Rachel, how do I shift it? Here's some ideas. All right, so first is very simply creating the awareness of co-creation. So what is the context in which I'm interacting with something, person, place, thing, environment, whatever? Where do I have the context in which to interact like this, or how I'm interacting? And does it match the way I want to experience my interaction right now? So this is a two-parter because we need to have awareness, but it's not just like, oh, I have a context that vanilla ice cream is boring because that's what I've been taught in our culture. But maybe for some people, vanilla is not boring, and you're like, hey, that doesn't really match. Okay, well, I don't want to buy into that cultural co-creation that vanilla is boring, right? It's a very simple example, but when we start with these little things, when you have an idea or you're interacting in a certain way and you're like, you're having an awareness about that, what does that really mean, right? What does that mean for me? So Number 2 is you pay attention to who and what you're co-creating with. So you hear people talk about boundaries all the time. You hear people talk about you're like the 5 most people that you hang around with. I saw a post the other day about really paying attention how you feel when you hang out with certain people, and if it's not allowing you and you're not able to be your truest self and interact in the way you want to with those people, it can feel more like a cage, right? So pay attention to who and what you're co-creating with. Now, this can be really difficult because oftentimes we're surrounded by family. We're surrounded by people who we feel obligated to stay in relation with when it is not healthy. So how you can, 2 questions you can ask yourself is, what is influencing my interaction right now? So what is influencing my interaction? And also knowing that everyone is biased because they're also co-creating with culture, and that you can release what is no longer yours. So if someone is coming at you like, you shouldn't do that, this is not how you do it, blah, 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 yada, 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 then you can be like, oh, that part isn't mine. Like, that is their bias according to what they have co-created in culture. And I can say, this is my path. You know, I did an episode not that long ago about how to stop the chaos and how to stay on your own path. And that was what this was about, is really understanding and recognizing what's mine and what isn't mine. Because when you recognize that, you release it and you free yourself from that. Okay, number 3, and I'm sure you have heard this before, but it's try curiosity, wonder, and play with possibility. So it actually is, what if? Like, what if it didn't end up the way that I thought it was going to? And I don't mean necessarily in a good way, but it could go better than expected. But I mean, when you have a negative tendency towards something or a person or an interaction, what if it didn't go that way? You know? And it's stirring up this curiosity. I call it playing with possibility. And when I had gone to a conference and met with the leading neuroscience in the US, and I asked them, well, how can I help people change and shift and be their fullest selves? And he's like, plant the seed of doubt. What if it didn't? What if I was? What if I want? You know? And then you move towards that way, right? And where does the fear of the unknown come from? Like, where does this come from? And do I want to continue to attach this meaning to the unknown? Is it helping me interact in my life the way I want to if I keep this attachment of meaning to the unknown? In my life, it has not helped me to be fearful, to have the fear of unknown. What I've done over the last several years is build this really beautiful confidence, and I call it, ultimate self-confidence. That even if there's like, oh, do I make this decision or that decision? The ultimate self-confidence is opened up and said, this is how I want to experience it. This is how I want to be interacting, right? Where does that fear of the unknown come from? Because it probably didn't come from you directly. Maybe in your life, you've been taught to pay attention so that no one gets hurt. Maybe you were made responsible for younger siblings and got in trouble if they got hurt. Oh my gosh, there's so many summers when my brother and I used to stay home all summer long, and we used to do some shit. I mean, like, Lord, and he would get in trouble and I would get in trouble, and oh my gosh, we are constantly trying to make sure we weren't getting in trouble. So where does it come from? And do I want to continue to attach the meaning? Okay. The 4th one is this: uncouple yourself from cultural context by getting to know yourself in a deeper way. So I'm going to say this last one again. Uncouple yourself from cultural context by getting to know yourself in a deeper way. When we notice what we have been told or who we've been told we are doesn't match our insides, that's when the tension starts, That's when all of the feelings about how you're not enough, how you can't do this, how you can't do that, what's wrong with me, why does she can do it and I can't do it? That's when all this stuff starts blowing up, right? How come they're normal and I'm not? I don't know, whatever you want to say, right? So notice when you have or what you've been told doesn't match how you feel on the inside. We've been taught to smash that down for sake of for sake of other people. And I am not of the opinion that that is healthy. I am of the opinion that the deeper I know myself, the more I am comfortable and engaged internally, the more I am comfortable and engaged externally. All right. The next one is create an awareness of your body and the meaning you assign to how it's feeling. So one thing that you can do if your body is feeling fear, if your body is feeling anxiety, if your body is feeling a certain way, instead of automatically saying, my body is feeling fear because I didn't blah, blah, blah. What if you just stopped and you took a moment and you asked your body and just observe what it's feeling without an interpretation? What then does that free up? Oh, my body is feeling tense. Not like, oh my gosh, my body is tense. I can't believe I've been doing this this whole entire time. How come no one blah, blah, blah. My body is feeling tense. Okay. And then I ask my body, what do you need? So I'm honing in to my way of nurturing myself internally, because then I can be more externally and engage more in the way I want to externally. There's a lot of things in our world that influence us. Music, news, online, social media, all of it. We're not always going to be able to escape that. But what I want to empower you to do is to know what it is. Know what's coming in. I don't really watch the news. People ask me, how do you not watch the news? You don't know what's going on. If I need to know what's going on, something will tell me and I'll be led to it. I mean, that's what happens every time. I don't listen to a lot of music on the radio. I don't think it's helpful. I don't think it's empowering. I think the songs are made to attract people who are feeling pain. And they don't really ever say how to get out of the pain. It just kind of continues. And the body, when you're singing along to a song that you've had a trauma to, when you're singing that, your body is back in that spot, just FYI. So it's kind of like paying attention to what we're ingesting. And not only consciously, but realize that this is subconscious. If you leave the TV on while you're sleeping, that shit goes in your subconscious. And how you begin to actively co-create is to begin to facilitate an awareness without the shame or judgment, without saying, oh, I can't believe I'm noticing how this person did this to me and I feel so ashamed. I feel so ashamed I can't do this. No, we recognize how the body is feeling. We say, this is how it's feeling. We unattach from the cultural context that we've been told, and we figure out how it truly feels within. So I hope that this episode has helped you understand more that you're not solely responsible. And that the more we learn, the more we understand and become aware of, really, truly, the more we impact the world in a positive way. And that first step is just creating an awareness of co-creation. I would love to hear any aha moments that you've gotten from this episode. I'd love to hear how you have maybe been saying holy cow, that is what has been keeping me in this spot. Once you realize that, we can move through it. If you would like some help and some guidance in moving through that, I would just really love to hear from you. I'm going to put a link that you can schedule a discovery call for me to see what it would be like for us to work together. But I am passionate about helping people just like you break free from these toxic social constructs, expectations, and beliefs that have made you smaller or have kept you small that you're ready to break out of. So you can feel free to put comment below this video. And I'll also put a link to that discovery call so that you and I can talk about how you can start to free yourself and really intentionally co-create your life and experience things like you've never had before. All right, my friend. This episode was also brought to you by the True You Vision Board event. This event is where we create focus, where we create mind-body connection, and where we use neuroscience to help you begin to manifest the things that you want in your reality. It's not just about the woo-woo, it is about the science, and it is about having a freaking good time while we're doing it. You can catch the link below, and to register, it's only $49, and I hope to see some of you there. All right, my friend, I'm going to end this video the way I end every single video. Please make sure to stay true to yourself, be kind to others, and always, always, always honor the wise one within you. I'll see y'all later. Bye. Hold up, don't go yet. If this episode inspired you to be 100% yourself, 100% of the time, no shame or guilt needed, even just that little bit more, I would love to hear from you in the comments below. I'm here, and I know you are too, to make a positive impact in the world. So don't forget to share the love. And if you were left wanting more of this type of kick-ass content, then don't forget to click the like and subscribe button. Until next time, make sure to stay true and be you. Until then, bye.